you were telling me a great story about a Weasels funeral and a
Yes,
man you
yes, that was a man called John Halfpenny. And John Halfpenny was a man who he would ceilidh at a crossroads now where my father and his four sisters lived. Way back now, this would be the early 1900s. This John Halfpenny used to call. But John was a man he was hired with a farmer in the in the neighbouring parish. So he would have had an odd good story to tell at night. He was a very truthful, honest type of a man. That he didn't believe in telling any lies or anything like that. But my father at the time he more or less got great sport out of him, you know. So he was telling him about working in this farm, well, for this farmer anyway, over in a place called Killanny in South Monaghan. So this night anyway, he decided he'd go for, there was a card house not too far away. And he wanted to play a game of cards. So we decided it was a lovely hot summer's evening. And he set off for the card game. And he had to travel down a long avenue to where the house was. So he was coming back. He overstayed his time. It was near morning before he got home. But as he was coming up this high avenue, he heard a funny kind of a noise at the back of a ditch. Now, the avenue itself was over the road, or over the avenue, so we was able to see what was underneath in the fields below. So he looked down anyway, and he discovered two stoats. Well, they're not weasels in this country, I'm told they're stoats, but you see these two stoats, and they appear to be carrying another stoat in their mouth. And he was very curious about this, so he decided he'd go on up the lane a wee bit further to have a better look. So as he went up the lane anyway, he got in another wee place. He was nearly the lane, or the field was parallel with the lane he was travelling on. So he was able to look down, and he seen the two stoats carrying another stoat in their mouth, and four stoats coming behind that again. So he noticed just before he pulled back the bushes a wee bit to get a better look, and he seen one stoat sitting on a stone. This was a fifth one. And the stoat must have heard him, because he put his tail in his mouth and he gave this squeal. So he said you could hear it in Carrick, it was that loud. So, so the next thing anyway, he took some fear, but he knew there was something wasn't right. So he took to the running anyway, and he ran as hard as he could. He had hobnail boots on him, which left. He was very tired before he got back to the house anyway. So he on the way back, two terrier dogs came running from the farmer's place. So he said it was lucky for me that they were on the lane. So he got back to the house anyway, and he told one of the sons of the farmer what he seen. Now, the son wasn't well up in wildlife or anything. He was nothing like his father, because his father was the old man was a fountain of knowledge. He knew everything about wildlife, because when he was a young lad, he used to go out with the hunt, and he knew everything that was to be known about wildlife and farming and everything like that. So he said, now he's 90 years of age, and you better wait for an hour or two till he gets up. It was early morning, and the young lad didn't want an eye on the father, so he said he'd be getting up about 11 o'clock or so. So about 11 o'clock anyway, the lad was called in anyway. So he told the old man anyway. The old man was coming across the floor on two sticks, and John told this old man what he seen. He says, I was coming up the lane. He described it as best he could. I was coming up the lane at such a time in the morning, and I seen these two stoats, he says, carrying a dead stoat in their mouth, and 4 or 5 coming after him. And I said, there was also one on a stone, and he put his tail in his mouth and he whistled. So the old man looked at him for a few minutes anyway, and he says, you know what that was? God, he says, I wouldn't have a clue. He says, that's what they called a Weasels Funeral. And he says, believe it or not, he says, I seen one of them when I was a boy. So he took his cap off anyway, and he sat down at the table. And he says, Jesus, he says, this is unbelievable. This is unreal. He says, it's a very rare occurrence, he says, to see anything like this. He says, I haven't seen one of them in years and years, although he says, I've heard about it all right. I've traveled with the hunt when I was a young fella. I used to go about with huntsmen here and there and everywhere. But this man now was just a pure encyclopedia where wildlife, folklore, superstitions or anything like that was the thing. And he was able to tell me also, the old man, about a hill that was over in our parish, and he called it Dominic's Hill. He says on a clear day, you can see 7 churches from the top of this hill, because he said, I was a young lad and I was after rabbits and hunting at the time, and I was able to see these 7 churches. He says, and he was right enough, because I asked some other man and he told me the same story, that there were 7 churches to be seen from the top of this hill. But he was brilliant now, this man, you know. But the old man now, he was telling me after, he said that you were very lucky, he says, coming back from what you seen with the weasels and the stoats, or the stoats, because they could attack. And he says, they're a serious predator. They're a killing machine, he said. And he said they'd go for the throat and they'd kill you straight away. And it's lucky that we weren't going to your funeral, he says, as well as the weasels. So that was more or less on the story about the Weasels Funeral. And also, I have one too about